This channel is not designed for entertainment or viral content. It exists for people who are actively healing, seeking clarity, or exploring the psychology behind their emotions and patterns. Every episode is carefully written and produced with emotional depth, reflection, and care. If you're here expecting casual commentary, high-energy hosts, surface-level discussions, flashy production, or entertainment-focused content, then we gently refer you to other channels offering just that. At DeepDive, we focus on quiet, deep, and intentional content to support those on a real mental health journey. If that's you, then welcome to our channel. You're in the right place.
Welcome to the Deep Dive podcast channel. Today we're diving into something that you might have heard about, maybe seen online. It sounds a bit strange at first. We're talking about this trend people are calling bathroom camping. And no, it's not actually setting up tents next to the toilets. Let's be clear on that. It's this surprisingly widespread thing, especially with younger folks, Gen Z in particular. It's about going into bathrooms in public places, on campus, at work, airports, places like that, but not just for the usual reasons. They're spending real time in there to decompress, sometimes to cry, maybe journal, or just to grab a moment completely alone. And look, it's easy to maybe chuckle about it, but it's really more than just some quirky habit. It seems to be a pretty common coping strategy. You see it talked about online, often with a kind of dark humor. But it actually signals some deeper needs around mental health and well-being. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack the psychology behind it. Why the bathroom? Why now? And what does it tell us about, well, the world we're living in, and maybe this fundamental need we all have for real offline sanctuaries. And as we get into this, if you find this interesting, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to the deep dive. Yeah, and definitely leave us a comment if this resonates, or if you found your own sort of unexpected quiet places. We really do like hearing your thoughts. Okay, so bathroom camping. Let's unpack that. It's obviously not just about, ducking out of a boring meeting for 5 minutes, is it? The big question, I guess, is why a bathroom? Of all places, it feels kind of counterintuitive. What makes that space a sanctuary?
It is a bit ironic, isn't it? But what's really fascinating, psychologically speaking, is that it's not random at all. Not really. If you look online, like you said, you see these comments everywhere. Things like, the bathroom stall is the only place I feel like nobody's watching me, or my brain just goes quiet on the cool tiles. It's not just a meme. It's a real signal from our nervous systems, essentially. When you break down the actual characteristics of a typical public bathroom, they line up almost perfectly with what a stressed nervous system is searching for.
Okay, so what are those characteristics? What makes it click on that, biological level?
Well, think about it. First, it's private, or at least semi-private with socially understood rules, right? You have a locked door. People generally don't bother you. It's also predictable, usually pretty neutral colors, not a lot of visual clutter. The sounds are often consistent. The hum of a fan, maybe running water, not chaotic. And importantly, it's often an offline space. You're less likely to be scrolling or performing online. Fewer demands. And maybe the biggest piece is that it can be somatically safe. That means it affects your body's physical sensations in a calming way. The cool temperature, maybe leaning against the tile, the white noise of the fan, these can actually soothe an agitated nervous system. So when people feel overwhelmed or unsafe out there in their main environment, they instinctively look for small, contained, predictable spaces to self-regulate. It's not about being lazy or avoiding things. It's more like nervous system triage. The body trying to find a quick way to stabilize.
Nervous system triage. I like that framing. It makes sense. So this instinct to find that haven, why does it seem so pronounced maybe with this generation? Why the need for such, extreme triage?
Yeah, it points to a broader issue of nervous system overload, really, on a massive scale. Our brains, biologically, they just weren't designed for the level of constant stimulation we face now. It's unprecedented. You've got sensory overload, screens everywhere, noise, notifications pinging constantly, just a flood of information. Then there's the social performance pressure. Being hyper-visible online, feeling like you always have to present a certain image, be on. And layered on top of that are these global traumas delivered in real time, climate change, social upheaval, economic uncertainty, all while trying to navigate demanding schools or workplaces. For Gen Z, who grew up with the internet, grew up amidst a lot of this instability, this state of being constantly a little bit on edge or dysregulated, it's almost become their baseline, the kind of stressed normal.
Wow, so their starting point is already heightened. How does that baseline, that internal state, connect to needing these retreats? How does polyvagal theory fit in?
It connects very directly. Polyvagal theory helps us understand how our nervous system scans for safety and threat. and shifts our state accordingly. So when we perceive a threat, and that threat can be anything from an actual danger to just feeling overwhelmed, the system might ramp up into fight or flight. That's your anxiety, restlessness, feeling agitated. But if the threat feels inescapable or just too much for too long, the system can shift into a different state, freeze or shut down. That's more like numbness, withdrawal, feeling disconnected, wanting to just collapse. Bathroom camping often seems to happen in that transition zone, or when someone needs a safe place to allow that freeze or collapse without judgment or interruption. So zooming out, you see how modern life is just constantly poking at our autonomic nervous system. It's constantly taxing it. The body, in its wisdom, is just trying to find any way to downregulate to get back to safety. And sometimes, yeah, that looks like hiding in a bathroom stall for 10 minutes.
And it's not only the day-to-day overwhelm, is it? You mentioned global issues.
Yeah.
There's this other layer, this eco-anxiety that seems particularly heavy for young people.
Oh, absolutely. Eco-anxiety is huge. And it's important to say it's not just worrying a little bit. It's this chronic fear, this dread about environmental doom. You know, climate disaster, species extinction, the injustice of it all. It's a very real, very valid emotional and psychological experience, even if it's not an official diagnosis. And the thing with Gen Z is they didn't just learn about this stuff. They were raised with it. It was in their school books, on the news, all over their social media feeds, right from childhood. Those images of melting ice caps, the constant countdowns, we only have X years left, that shapes your worldview during formative years.
That's just an enormous weight to carry, especially when you're young. How does that kind of looming existential threat play into needing these small, contained moments of retreat?
Well, the threat of eco-anxiety feels different, right? It feels global, constant, kind of inescapable. There's no easy off switch. It fundamentally impacts how you think about the future, about meaning, about having children even. So retreating to a bathroom in that context can be an act of just needing a pause from that overwhelming existential grief. It's often too big to process while you're trying to, get through your classes or your workday. It raises that really tough question. How do you cope with a threat that feels infinite? For some, that little tiled room offers a temporary container, a place to just be with that heaviness for a moment without having to perform normalcy, a necessary pause, like you said.
Yeah, a container for the uncontainable, almost. And then there's the digital side. So much life is online. What happens when even downtime isn't really downtime because we're still connected, still scrolling?
That's such a critical piece of this. Digital life is life for many, especially younger generations. But it comes with this constant engagement. You might be doom scrolling through terrible news right before trying to sleep, or constantly comparing your life, your looks, your achievement to curated online versions of others. There's this immense pressure to be always on, always responding, always visible. Even when you think you're resting, your brain is often still processing, comparing, reacting, and the consequences are real. Things like dopamine depletion leading to that feeling of numbness or just being blah, chronic fatigue in the nervous system. You get this weird state of being kind of hyper-aroused and anxious, but also emotionally shut down at the same time, exhausted but wired. So the bathroom, again, becomes this little portal, a place to actually disconnect, to take a breath away from the performance, the input, the reactivity. It's a force pause button.
It really sounds like our instincts are pointing towards something important here. Are these bathroom retreats, in a way, mirroring actual therapeutic ideas about safety and regulation?
They absolutely are. It's quite remarkable, actually. When you look at trauma-informed care, a huge focus is on creating safety, predictability, and boundaries to help regulate the nervous system. And bathrooms, surprisingly, often offer these elements. Predictable layout, sensory neutrality, less likely to have jarring sounds or bright flashing lights. You have autonomy, you lock the door, you decide when to leave, and there's that clear physical separation from whatever chaos might be outside. This directly mirrors the therapeutic concept of a containment space, a safe, bounded environment where the nervous system can calm down enough to allow for processing or just resting.
Okay, but what about the idea that maybe this is just avoidance? Is it actually a healthy coping mechanism?
That's a fair question.
Yeah.
And like any coping strategy, it can become maladaptive, right? If it's the only strategy someone has, or if it leads to significant isolation and prevents them from addressing underlying issues, then yes, it could be problematic. But I think for many, maybe most who do this, it's actually a very valid, very instinctive strategy for finding immediate emotional safety. It's often a first step. It's the body basically saying, okay, pause. I need a minute to not feel overwhelmed. It's a moment of self-awareness, really.
And going back to the senses, you mentioned sensory neutrality. It really highlights how overwhelming our typical environments can be, doesn't it?
It really does. Think about open-plan offices, noisy classrooms, busy streets, even some homes. They can be sensory minefields, bright lights, loud, unpredictable noises, lots of movement, strong smells. This is especially challenging for neurodivergent individuals, folks with ADHD, autism, or people with trauma histories who often have heightened sensory sensitivity. Overwhelm in these environments can easily trigger anxiety, shutdown, or dissociation. Bathrooms, by contrast, often have dimmer or consistent lighting. The acoustics, the echoes can sometimes mask outside noise, neutral colors, those cool, smooth surfaces for grounding. Gen Z is, in a way, instinctively creating these sensory safe havens in places where maybe none were intentionally provided. It's not about trying to escape life in a negative way. It's about creating a microenvironment where the nervous system can finally get a break, find equilibrium. The body's just asking for what it needs.
Okay, this is where it gets really practical and I think hopeful. If our bodies and brains are clearly signaling this need for micro rest, for these contained pauses, what can we all learn from this bathroom camping trend? How can we build more intentional moments of calm, maybe without having to actually camp out in a bathroom?
Exactly. We can reverse engineer it, like you said.
Yeah.
The key takeaway is that rest isn't just about sleeping 8 hours. It's not a luxury. It's a fundamental need of the nervous system. And it includes these small moments of regulation throughout the day. Micro breaks, offline time, emotional space, sensory quiet. Bathroom camping is like the desperate DIY version,
Yeah.
but we can definitely be more proactive.
So how do we start doing that? How do we create our own little personal oases, applying those principles of safety and predictability you talked about?
Well, first, you can try to claim a small physical space. It doesn't have to be big. A corner in a room, a comfy chair near a window, maybe even clearing out a small closet. Focus on sensory simplicity there. Maybe soft lighting, a comfortable cushion, perhaps earplugs nearby. Then, crucially, set boundaries for that space. This is a no work, no scrolling, no problem-solving zone, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Make it feel a bit sacred. And create a little ritual around it. Maybe putting your phone on silent or airplane mode is the first step. Touching something grounding a smooth stone, a textured fabric. Taking a few slow breaths with your hand on your chest. You could even have a little mantra, just saying to yourself, it's okay to pause now. Oh. And finally, consider sensory anchors. A calming scent you like, lavender perhaps. A small object to hold, maybe some quiet ambient music, or just the sound of a fan. These things signal safety to your brain over time. This is my regulation spot.
I love that, making it intentional. So when we look at the bigger picture, instead of just dismissing bathroom camping as weird or avoidant, what's the real message here? What should we be hearing?
I think we should be hearing a really important signal. It suggests that Gen Z isn't weak or lazy. In many ways, they're incredibly attuned to living in a deeply overwhelming world. They're instinctively carving out boundaries where systems often provide none. They're creating offline moments in a culture that demands constant connection. They're honoring their need for stillness when they feel overstimulated and finding quiet places where, just for a moment, nobody is judging their pause or demanding more from them. It's a form of somatic wisdom, really, survival, not failure.
It really pushes back against that whole hustle culture narrative, doesn't it? The idea that burnout is somehow a measure of success.
Absolutely. It fundamentally challenges that. It says burnout isn't a badge of honor. It's a sign that the system is broken. Regulation requires refuge. We can't expect people, ourselves included, to tackle huge global challenges like climate justice or social inequality if our own internal systems are constantly in crisis mode. Rest, in this context, isn't passive. It's actually an act of resistance. It's necessary for recovery and resilience. And it really forces us to ask, what are our environments, our schools, workplaces, public spaces failing to provide? If the only place someone feels they can safely take a deep breath is a bathroom stall, the issue isn't primarily with that individual, it's a collective signal flare. Our collective nervous system is saying, the way we've structured things, the expectations, the pace, it's crushing us. We need to stop pathologizing these coping mechanisms and start designing better, more humane, more regulated environments for everyone.
That is such a powerful way to frame it. A signal flare from the collective nervous system. Wow. So ultimately, this phenomenon, bathroom camping, it's more than just a quirky trend. It's like a whisper, isn't it? From our own bodies, asking for quiet, for space, for a break from the relentless demand to perform.
Exactly. It's not really about escaping the world forever. It's about learning how to build moments of safety within it. And maybe realizing that the first and most important sanctuary we need to cultivate is actually within our own nervous system, learning to regulate ourselves wherever we are.
That's a beautiful and really empowering final thought, learning to build that safety within. Thank you so much for walking us through this today. It's given me, and I hope you listening, a lot to think about. It's fascinating how something seemingly small can reveal so much. We hope this deep dive encourages you to notice where you find your own moments of calm and maybe how you can intentionally create more of them. If you enjoyed this conversation, please do subscribe to the Deep Dive podcast channel for more explorations like this one. And we always appreciate your comments and thoughts, so feel free to share them. Thanks for listening.